All right. So Gopigar is from Palakollu and Bhimavaram, Hyderabad అనేది తన way of journey అన్నమాట. How he came here అనేది. So little more about Gopi garu. He is a successful entrepreneur. He got graduated from IIT Kharagpur University, and then he did his master's from University of Maryland. He did a lot of IT business and more than 12 years of experience in IT field, IT business field. He exited a bunch of IT business. Then he got into real estate. అసలు రియల్ ఎస్టేట్ లోకి ఎలా ఎంటర్ అయ్యారు అనేది ఒక పెద్ద స్టోరీ ఉంది. సో హీస్ గోయింగ్ టు గివ్ అస్ సమ్ డీటెయిల్స్ అరౌండ్ ఇట్. అండ్ దెన్ హౌ హీ ఈస్ ట్రైంగ్ టు బిల్డ్ ఎ పోర్ట్ఫోలియో ఆఫ్ కంపెనీస్, రియల్ ఎస్టేట్ ఇన్వెస్ట్మెంట్స్ ఎలా స్టార్ట్ చేస్తున్నారు, ఎలా స్టార్ట్ చేసి ఎలా మూవ్ ఫార్వర్డ్ అనేది. హీ హాస్ లాట్ ఆఫ్ బ్యాక్గ్రౌండ్ అరౌండ్ రియల్ ఎస్టేట్ అండ్ వాట్ కైండ్ ఆఫ్ ప్లాట్ఫామ్, హౌ హీ చూస్, ఎలా ఫైండ్ చేశారు, ఎలా రన్ చేస్తున్నారు అనేది చాలా. హీ హాస్ లాట్ ఆఫ్ expertise on the real estate. If you observe, we can see Cobra Capital Partners, Golden Gate, Art Reality, Seven Peaks. There are a bunch of companies where he is running right now, especially on the real estate. So మనం వాటి గురించి ఫర్దర్ గోపి గారు మాటలో తెలుసుకుందాము. ఓకే, వెల్కమ్ అండి గోపి గారు. థ్యాంక్స్ అలాట్ ఫర్ chiming in here and helping our community folks. We just to give you an update అండి గోపి గారు, our community and the people who joined this call is a combination of IT entrepreneurs at the same time IT employees. We work in IT majority, like the way you start your career, right? So ilaga start chesi, we've been doing IT for quite a while. Along with that, we have a bunch of business in the parallel. But real estate వచ్చేసరికి కొంతమందికి అవగాహన ఉంది, కొంతమందికి we are very new to it. Probably that's the place where you might need your help, Andy. I'm trying to set the expectation so that when
Yep.
you okay. All right. With that said, Andy, Gopi gar, I will give it back to you, and then probably we can start your first slide if you are okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you, Andy.
Thanks, Andy. So, do you want me to share the slides from my side or?
It's okay, Andy. If you let me have the control, and I will.
Okay, sure. So, all right, I'll wait for you to put the slides up.
Yeah, the first slide. Why single family? I hope you're able to see my screen, right?
Actually, no, we can't. We only see your logo. అందుకే అడుగుతున్నా.
అవునా?
లేదండి, చూస్తున్నాము. స్క్రీన్ కనిపిస్తుంది. కనిపిస్తుంది స్క్రీన్.
కనిపిస్తుందా మీకు?
కనిపిస్తుంది గోపి గారు.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jagaru. And I see Vijay is also here, and I want to thank my friend Vijay here for inviting me to be on this panel here. So, as Jay was introducing me.
Thanks for Gopi for accepting our invitation. We're gonna squeeze you a lot today.
Definitely.
For the last how many years?
Sure, definitely.
Out of with your knowledge,
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
So, I'm also in the DC metro area. That's how I know Vijay. We have known each other for a few years now. And my parents are from Palakollu and Bhimavaram, so I had to put that out there because DC annagani, that's where our roots are. And I spent some time in Hyderabad too, about probably 10 years in Hyderabad, before I came here. Sir, next slide. Sir.
Okay. Is why single family and a slide ఉందండి ఇప్పుడు?
My background అని ఉందండి ఒకటి. Okay, if you can go to the background slide.
Okay. Yeah, my background.
Sure. Okay. So I graduated from Kharagpur, came to University of Maryland. IT lo panchesanu for 5 years. Then 5-6 years. Then I started my own business once I got my green card. Remote Tiger Skill Logic ani, we used to develop iOS apps, mostly mobile-based business consulting. I ran that for 12 years, and just before COVID, March of 2020 or 19, that's when I exited. And the way I became a landlord, actually how I got into real estate is, మనకు తెలిసే ఉంటుంది కదా, staffing business లో usually we bring people in and train them and all that. So ఈ ట్రైనింగ్ కోసం వచ్చిన students కి I used to rent apartments, corporate apartments. మన ఆఫీస్ పక్కనే, there was a time when I was renting 13 apartments and I was paying 20,000 a month in rents. సో అనవసరంగా డబ్బులు వేస్ట్ అని చెప్పి I started buying properties near my office. That's how I got into real estate, and that was 2015. And at that time, there was still a lot of foreclosures going on, where I was in my location in Maryland. So I didn't even know a whole lot. I just went and bought these bank properties, and they were in bad shape. There are some properties where um, you couldn't even live. You will actually die if you stay there for an hour. That's how bad they were, right? So either contract తీసుకొచ్చాం క్లీన్ చేయించి new floors, new paint, new kitchens అని చేయించాను. And then I started putting my students in there, people who came for training. And I kept doing it. I bought 9 properties like that. And it worked out really well. Instead of paying 20,000 in rent, now I'm able to pay myself. So in that process, I created, that's why if you see one of the businesses on there, it says RT Realty on the slide, that is Remote Tigers Realty. Remote Tiger was my business, and RT Realty was the company that held all the properties. So my right hand was paying rent to my left hand. That's how I did it at that time. So I started with that, and that's how I became a landlord. Once I acquired the number of properties that I needed, I realized this is pretty easy to do. So I continued doing that on the side. And that's when I started another business, basically another LLC, just to do flips. సర్లే మనకు కావాల్సినవి ఉన్నాయని చెప్పి then I started fixing houses and selling them. It was more out of a hobby, and of course I lost money. My first 3 deals I lost probably 150,000 in the first 3 deals. But I mean, I look at it as college tuition for learning real estate, right? So you you learn from it. But now, after a few years, I'm in a position where I can look at a deal within 5 minutes. I'll know whether I'll make money or not in a given deal. But that takes time and experience and whatnot. So I kept expanding after that. And if you look at the businesses there are multiple LLCs. And at the top of all of these, మీకు చూసారంటే అక్కడ మీకు ఏడుకొండలవాడు కనిపిస్తాడు, కుబేరుడు కనిపిస్తాడు. మీకు ఫైనాన్సింగ్ ఉండాలి కదా రియల్ ఎస్టేట్ చేయాలంటే. సో Kubera Capital Partners is my financing arm, and Seven Peaks is my holding company. I'll talk more about the overall corporate structure in a later slide on how to structure this if you want to do this on a scale. Um, so somebody's asking me to share my lessons learned from 150K. I'll actually, if you don't mind, I'll wait till the end of the presentation. I'll try to finish this quickly, and then we'll make this more interactive. I'll definitely address that. But the quick answer for that is, you make money in real estate when you buy, not when you sell. What I did was I bought the wrong property in the wrong place for the wrong price. And that's how I lost money. But, I learned over time, but that's the quick answer to that. There are a few other things too that I learned along the way, but I'll share more towards the end. So let's go to the next slide. Why single family? Anidhi?
Yeah. So the next slide, why single family, Andy?
Okay. So after I bought the properties that I need for my business, for my IT business, I was contemplating, should I do more commercial real estate, or should I do more residential? Andaro commercial చేయమన్నారు. I mean, obviously commercial, there is scale and whatnot. And at least multifamily చేశారనుకోండి, apartment buildings, there is scale. You can get 100 apartments in one shot, right? But to me, to some extent, it was a passion to do single family residential and all that. But also I realized that multifamily, there are a lot of sophisticated investors. I mean, these days, hedge funds are not these days, hedge funds and all these financial institutions have been involved in multifamily for a long, long, long time, right? And people who are playing with hundreds of millions of dollars there, and that's their full-time business, and that's a very serious business. Why compete with them? Let me look at single family. And that was one thought, right? And also, it's a low barrier to entry. You can buy one unit, with $50,000, and you can get a loan, and you can get in very easily. That was another reason. And also, it's easy to liquidate as well. Let's say, suppose you don't want to do it anymore. Single family houses are easy to sell. If you look at multifamily, it takes anywhere from a year to 2 years to sell them because it's a very long process, right? Selling big buildings and commercial properties. And on top of it, I also realized there's better rent growth and also retention. Turnover is the biggest killer in real estate. మీకు అపార్ట్మెంట్స్ ఉన్నాయనుకోండి, on an average nationwide, every 18 months, people actually, vacate the apartment, and you have to get a new tenant and whatnot. Single family low, the average is 3.5 years. So you retain tenants longer, less administrative costs, less time, less vacancy. In fact, I had a tenant who stayed with me for a little over 6 years. 3,500 per month rent కట్టుకుంటా 6 years ఉన్నాడు. He paid 200 some thousand dollars in rent, to almost $250,000 in rent on a $550,000 house. After 6 years and paying 250,000 in rent, he bought the house from me for 550. Okay, so that's a good deal, right? That's a good deal. So you have very long-term tenants. In fact, I have some tenants who tell me that they are not going to leave anytime soon. They are thinking 10 years, 15 years, and so on. So that is a fire and forget. You don't have to worry about it. You just have to do maintenance. And uh, what else did I have? And appreciation wise too, I realized that single families appreciate really well. In fact, because of COVID, we got really lucky. My portfolio appreciated at least 15% in the last 1 year, which is huge. I mean, typical annual appreciation is 3%. 3% is a nationwide average, but in the last year, things appreciated really well. So that worked out really well as well. So having said that, I mean, see, there is no right or wrong side of the business, right? You have to focus on something. One of the things I've learned in business is that Manaki, anytime we see a new idea, we run towards it. And I've done that a lot when I was young. I've done a lot of different things, and you don't focus on any one thing. You had to pick your battles. And here I decided this is the direction I'm going. That's not to say there have been people who are extremely successful in commercial real estate or multifamily, but you have to pick what you want to do, and this is what I decided to do. And what you will realize is, at the end of the day, మీరు చెగోడీలు చేసినా సరే, you will become an expert in it. You will make your chegodis better than the next guy once you keep doing it for a long time. And that is what we are looking for. That's what we are looking for, which is pick one area and become the expert so that you can do it really, really well. And I think I've improved a lot over the last 6 years of doing this, where I've gained a lot of insights. Now it's a lot easier for me to do, and I'm able to do something that maybe new investors are not able to do because of the experience and exposure and the contacts that I have. So there's no right or wrong thing to do. Real estate has always been great. If you look at the billionaire list on Forbes, majority of the billionaires actually come through real estate. In fact, if you look at McDonald's also, McDonald's is more of a real estate play than a burger play. It's not a fast food company. It's more of a real estate company. Most of their assets and value is in the real estate. So I focus on this, and this is where my expertise is. So I'll talk more about this. So what I'm going to do next, sir, next slide, you mentioned, sir, wealth accumulation.
Yeah. Yep. Wealth accumulation.
So what I'll talk about in the next two slides, this one and the next one, is I will, these are pretty rough numbers. And basically, I want to show you how real estate may not look very sexy, but it makes a lot of money over time. It's all about time value of money, right? So I'll show you what a typical beginner can do. And in the next slide, I'm going to show you how to do it and how to juice the returns further so that you generate outsized returns on this, right? So let's take a simple example. And I'm using round numbers, 100,000 కి ఎక్కడ ఇల్లు దొరకదు ఈ రోజుల్లో, but maybe Midwest in some areas you still can. But let's say you bought a house for 100,000, right? And you borrowed 75% of that from a bank, and you put 25,000 out of your pocket. I just made some basic assumptions that it's a 4% interest. and $800 in rent per month, and the appreciation is 3%. ఈ సిచ్యువేషన్లో మీరు ఇల్లు కొన్నారంటే మీకు నెలకి చేతికి ₹100 ఎంత వస్తుంది? $100. That may not look like a whole lot, right? I mean, you're like, ఎందుకు తలనొప్పి అనుకుంటాం. But let's look at, if you buy and hold a property like this, let's look at what happens. The three components where you make money is, one is cash flow. Cash flow is the money that you have left after paying for, the taxes, the mortgage, the taxes, the insurance, and all of that good stuff, right? Money that you have left, which may be on a $800 rent, you may make $50, you may make $100 in a month, right? So that's the cash flow. The second component is appreciation. The appreciation of properties, right? So that is the next component, which happens over time, which compounds over time if you hold these properties. And the third component is the loan pay down. So you are collecting the rent, and basically you are using the rent to pay down the loan. Initially, you're starting with a $75,000 loan. And at the end of 10 years, let's say you have a 10-year period, the loan may only be 60,000 or 50,000. So you have paid down $15,000 worth of loan, right? So if you look at the whole picture, let's say you hold this one property for 10 years, you will generate a cash flow. I did the numbers on this, and these are approximate numbers. You will generate a cash flow of $25,000 over the next 10 years, right? And the property will appreciate by $35,000 at 3% appreciation, okay? And you will pay down $15,000 worth of the loan, okay? So if you add these three up, basically between your cash flow, appreciation, and loan pay down, you captured $75,000. But what was your initial investment? Your initial investment was just 25,000. So you started with 25,000, and in 10 years, you had a return of 75 on top of the initial 25. Basically, your total investment has become 100,000. So basically, మీరు ఈ రోజు అందులో 25,000 పెట్టి, you wait 10 years and you sell it, you will clear total between all these, you will clear 100,000. So your additional return is 75,000, which is annualized. It's a 12% return. ఇందులో మనం ఏ మ్యాజిక్ చేయలేదు. Simply we bought a house and we put a tenant in there. Of course, what is not factored into this is the fact that will you be able to get 800 rent for a $100,000 home? Not in a big metro area, but that's why you have to target smaller metros, right? And the second thing is, who is doing all the work? You are the one doing all the work. I mean, work in the sense managing the tenant, collecting the rent, and all of that. I've already factored in maintenance and repair expenses into this. Okay. So in a simple scenario where you buy a simple property, you're looking at making a 12% return, 25,000 berte, you will make an additional 75,000 in 10 years. So I want to pause quickly here before I go to the next one and see if there are any questions specifically to this. Let me see.
స్పెసిఫిక్ గా ఏమీ లేదు కానీ
ఏం లేదండి?
మనం
Okay.
మన క్వశ్చన్స్ ఎట్ ద ఎండ్ లో చేద్దాం.
End లో తీసుకుందాం. Okay, no
Yeah.
problem.
Okay.
All right. So this is the basic concept, right? And what I'm trying to demonstrate here is that though $100 a month in cash flow doesn't look like something great, $100, $200, it will add up eventually. And you really make your money on the appreciation and the loan pay down and the compounding of the value of what you put in there. So this is a basic example. In the next slide, next slide, Jumanjan, sir.
Yeah. Wealth accumulation. Next slide, Andy.
Okay.
If I can.
So I'm calling this wealth accumulation plus plus. What we'll see here is exact same example. What if you are doing it a little more differently? Okay. What if you do it a little more differently? So basically, same $100,000 house ni. Let's say the house is in bad shape, and you bought it from a bank or a foreclosure or one of these things. 65,000 konar ankondi. But obviously the house needs work, and you put 20,000 into the house. So you have $100,000 house, you bought it for 65, you put 20,000 into it out of pocket. So initial investment మీరు 85,000 పెట్టారు ఇందులో. But it's the same house. So once you have cleaned up the house, fixed everything, the house is worth 100,000. Okay. So it's $100,000 house. You put 85,000 into it. Now, because the house is worth 100,000, you can refinance this property. So initially, you will put your own cash to do the acquisition, to do the rehab on the house, and then you will go and refinance the house with a bank once you put a tenant in there. So rest of the assumptions are the same: 4% interest rate, $800 a month, appreciation is 3%. Except that once you put a tenant in there, you go to the bank looks at, okay, investment property is worth 100,000. We can lend you 75% of the value of the property. So that's how you get 75,000 back. So what happened in this case? You put 85,000 into it and you got 75,000 back. So your initial investment is only 10,000. As opposed to your previous example చూసారంటే ఇదే 100,000 house ని మీరు మార్కెట్ రేట్ కొంటే మీ చేతిలో నుంచి 25,000 పడేది. Instead, here, because you bought a house and rehabbed it, your total initial investment after refinancing is only 10,000. Everything else stays the same. Same tenant, same 10 years ఉన్నారనుకోండి. Your 10,000 has become 75,000 here in 10 years. Now multiply that. What if you put $1 million? You'll end up with 7.5 million in 10 years. So that's basically coming to 23% annualized return, which is exactly what you got from Google in the last 10 years. 2011 నుంచి 2021 కి last 10 years లో Google stock returned 23%. But that was an unknown. You can never predict that. This is something that you can actually plan for and predict. It's a very stable asset and it's a physical asset. It's not going to lose value overnight, and you won't spend sleepless nights. మీరు stocks లో పెట్టారనుకోండి. Of course, there's money in stocks. People who do well do really well. This is just a way of diversifying. And in terms of మీ స్టమక్ ఏక్ అండ్ హార్ట్ ఏక్, దేర్ ఇస్ అ లాట్ లెస్. ఎందుకంటే పొద్దున్నే సిఎన్బిసిలో మీ హౌస్ వాల్యూ కనిపించదు. $100 నుంచి $80కి పడిందని కానీ 60కి పడిందని కానీ కనిపించదు. It's something that happens very slowly. So it's not something that you have to worry about on a daily basis. The stress level is a lot less, and it's very scalable when you do this. In fact, when I talk about this, one of the things I want to mention is that nowadays, in the last 5-6 years, actually, a lot of big institutional investors have also entered the single family market. In fact, BlackRock, which most of you may be familiar with, they are involved in it. There's American Homes for Rent and out on the Tricor and Incot on the. There's a whole bunch of somebody asked what is rehab. Rehab is rehabilitation of the property. So a lot of these big companies, institutional investors, they are actually they are buying houses at the rate of about 1,000 houses a month. Just the other day, I had a conference call with this company called Mind. They are buying right now. They are at the pace of 400-500 a month. They want to buy 1,000 houses every month. American Homes for Rent owns 80,000 homes. Tricor owns 30,000 homes. So these guys are getting into this market, single family market, and they are buying up all the houses. You can mark my word, actually, in 10 to 15 years from now, home ownership in this country is going to fall below 50%. Because it's not the same thing. The past belief was you have to buy a house, own a house, stay in the. People like the flexibility of not owning the house. Life has become more transient. People are moving from one place to another, and they like the flexibility. Especially the younger generation, they don't place as much value on owning the house. So we are actually becoming a country of renters, and that's where we are headed. That's why this is a great market. And one of the things I forgot to mention earlier, as of right now, there is a metric which is new households formed. That's basically people getting married and having kids. In the next 10 years, if you look at the total number of new households that are going to form in the next 10 years versus the number of new houses being built in the next 10 years, the difference between the two is 10 million, which means in the next 10 years, there'll be a shortage of 10 million single family homes, with the way that demographics are growing. So what will they do? They are going to have to rent because we are not building fast enough. Though you may feel like there are new developments happening everywhere, that is nowhere near the demand. And that's why this is a great time to be in this market. You know, Eventually 10 years out, if you just liquidate your portfolio, you'll do really, really well. So, sir, next slide you mentioned, sir.
Yeah. How to build a portfolio. Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk about, now that we have seen a couple of examples, the first one being simpler way of doing it, second one doing it with a rehab, buying bank properties and all that. There are three ways you can do it. One is, if you can buy a portfolio, by all means, I would say do it. If you're working with tens of millions of dollars and you want an immediate scale and you want some place to put your money, definitely you can buy portfolios. There are companies out there which sell portfolios. Unlike in the past, ఇదివరకు సింగిల్ ఫ్యామిలీలో ఒక భయం ఏంటంటే ఎవడమ్ముతాడు కూర్చుని 100 ఇళ్ళు కూర్చుని ఒక్కటి you don't have to do that anymore. Nowadays, the way single families are sold are, if you have a bunch of them, they are sold as a portfolio, and they are not sold based on the comps. మన సొంత ఇల్లు అమ్మినప్పుడు కాంపరబుల్స్ చూస్తారు కదా neighborhood లో. Portfolio అమ్మినప్పుడు అలా చూడరు. The way they do it is they basically look at the total income, total revenue minus total expenses. What's your net operating income? Based on that, they use a cap rate, just like commercial properties. They use cap rates. Right now, the going cap rates for single families are anywhere from 4.5 to 6. Okay, so you can always buy a portfolio if you are working with millions of dollars, and if you want to invest millions of dollars, if you want immediate scale, right? That's one way of doing it. Second is, you can buy properties that are on the market which are ready to rent, where you're not doing any of the renovation, you're not fixing up anything, you're buying them and you're renting them, right? Now, to do the first method, it takes a lot of money. To do the second method, that's the easiest one. That's the easiest way to start, to gain experience, to cut your teeth. Now, test the waters. And if, let's say, you're doing a full-time job and all of that, you already have your hands full, maybe number two is a good way to ease yourself into it, just to understand the rental side of it before you go to the rehab side of it. The number three is called the BRRR strategy. I'll explain that further in the next slide, but that's where I was talking about, buying and rehabbing the properties and refinancing them. This one is not passive anymore. మీరు నంబర్ వన్ చేశారనుకోండి, పోర్ట్ఫోలియో కొన్నారనుకోండి, you just buy the portfolio, you hand it off to some management company, you're done. You put 10 million, 20 million, 50 million into it, you're done. Number two, also it's fairly passive. You could do it passively, but number three is more of a business. And that's how I do it. I follow number three, which is I'm actively involved in it. And I'll actually talk about this a little further. So next slide, you mentioned, sir.
Yeah. Buy, rehab, rent, refund. Be a
Yeah.
BRRRR.
The BRRRR strategy explained further, right? So BRRR, basically buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat the whole thing, right? That's how we do it. So buying, like I said earlier, you make your money in real estate when you buy. You have to buy right. Selling is incidental. If you buy right, you'll make money anyway when you sell. You can't really do a lot of magic when selling. They sell for what they are worth. The market decides the selling price, but you have a lot of flexibility during buying. So when you're doing an active business like this, basically you're actively hunting for deals from multiple sources. That's where I spend a good amount of my time. Most of my time goes in finding the deals, right? Of course, there's always the MLS, which is the regular, real estate listings. You will find deals there also. You just have to look. You just have to understand. One of the things that I do on the MLS is, if I see a listing I'm interested in, I don't take my own agent. I do have a couple of agents I work with, but usually I call the listing agent. Endukante, the guy who is listing the house for the seller, he knows the most about the situation. Number one. Number two, I call the listing agent and I basically tell him, hey, look, I'm not going to bring an agent. Why don't you write the contract on my behalf also? In most states, they can. In most states, they can. So వాడికి బెనిఫిట్ ఏంటి లిస్టింగ్ ఏజెంట్ కి? He can make both sides of the commission. Instead of making 3% from the seller, he'll make 3 and 3, 6%, because I'm not bringing an agent. So all of a sudden, he has a lot of incentive to sell the house to you. పక్కనోడికి 300, పక్కనోడికి 400కి అమ్మినా మనకి 200కి అమ్మినా వాడికి సేమ్ కమిషన్ వస్తుంది, because he's doubling his commission. So the incentive changes big time. So definitely that's one approach that I take. I buy a lot of short sales. I can, short sales in itself could be a 2-hour talk on how you do it, but basically in brief, short sales is where people are behind on their payment and they come to an agreement with the bank that, hey, look, don't foreclose my house. I'm going to sell it for whatever it sells for, even though it's not enough to pay off the loan, but please agree to take this money and leave me alone. That's the agreement that a bank and a homeowner make. And the banks are willing to make that agreement because foreclosure is a very expensive process for banks. ఇప్పుడు let's say ఆ ఇంటి మీద లోన్ $300,000 ఉందనుకోండి, and if the guy is able to, if the homeowner is behind on payments, he's in a bad situation, he can go to the bank and say, look, I'm going to do a short sale. Short sale చేసినప్పుడు 250కి అమ్మాడు అనుకోండి, he'll just pay off the 250 to the bank and the bank will release him from his obligations. The reason the bank is willing to take a haircut for $50,000 is because instead of accepting the short sale, if they actually foreclose on the property, they may end up spending $100,000 in the whole process, and it'll take 2-3 years to do the foreclosure. So the banks also like to get rid of it off their books, even if they lose some money. So short sales are very, very good. I find them very no, they do really well for me, short sales. Of course, there's foreclosure auctions. Once the bank actually you know puts a house under foreclosure, they auction the house at the court. Sometimes they do online auctions. You can acquire properties there too. But let's say a property does not sell at the auction, it's called an REO. REO stands for real estate owned. All that means is that now the house did not sell at the auction. Now the bank owns the house because they could not get rid of it. They own the house. Then they list it. So you can buy. Those are good deals too. Wholesalers are people who try to find, these are groups of people who try to find off market properties which are not listed at a good price, and they work with investors. Like if you're an active investor, they'll work with you and say, hey, look, I can get you this house for this much, you go take a look. So all of that happens off market, right? Probate is when somebody, there's a deceased owner and there's an estate sale going on. You can work with estate sale attorneys, and some of these estate sales show up on regular listings, but you have to understand that it's an estate and you approach it very differently. And then subject to deals are where you take over the existing mortgage. A lot of people, you'd be surprised, they are so fed up with their house, they're willing to walk away from the house if you take over the mortgage. There may be equity in the house. Sometimes we take over a house, the house is worth 200,000, their loan is only 160, but they don't want to deal with it anymore. They are not as well versed with everything. They are behind on payments. Maybe they are behind on payments for 5,000. They're like, you know what, just take over my loan, take over my payments, I want to walk away from this. you know you basically take over the house for 160 and you pay off the other 5,000. So now you have a $200,000 house for 165. So those are subject to deals. So there are many, many ways of acquiring, and that's something that I learned this over time. There is no book out there. I mean, there are courses out there that you can do, maybe, but you will learn this. Everybody will learn this. It's just like I was saying, you keep doing this, you'll figure out more and more ways of doing it. So anyway, that's the acquisition process. I spent all this time on it because that's where you really make your money. Rehab is basically you have to have a good contractor, who can work with you. I have a dedicated contractor. This guy has been working with me since January of 2016. Him and his crew. He has his own crew, about It varies anywhere from 5 to 10 people. I've kept him busy from January 2016 until today. He exclusively works only for me, and my job is to keep buying houses to keep him busy. There are times when I don't find good deals. I still buy a house just to keep these guys busy because I don't want to lose good people. So I may not make a profit on it. I may only make $5,000 in 3 months by buying that house, but I still buy it just so that to keep them busy, keep them paid. You know, he's happy, his family is happy, so he stays with me, right? So, but that's a critical path. A lot of people struggle with finding good contractors. Then comes the renting part. Either you can outsource it to a management company or you do it yourself. And there are good rental software out there. I use something called Buildium, property management software. So it's very professional. So my tenants all go online, pay the rents. If they have any, some dishwasher is not working, they go in there, put in a ticket and a service request. The service request goes to my property manager, who is my employee, and it also goes to my contractor. My contractor in the morning looks at, okay, today I have a service request here, service request here. He just runs out there, takes care of them. So that's where a lot of your skill as an administrator process person comes in, managing the whole rental process, because you're dealing with people. Buying and rehabbing, you're dealing with properties, but renting, you're dealing with people, tenants. Could become a little painful. Most of you IT guys know, we have employees, and you know how much pain it is to deal with so many employees. Every day, everybody has a different problem, right? So rental is, but you can always outsource it too. It'll eat into your margins, but it may be worthwhile thinking about it if you plan on doing this at a large scale, right? Next is refinance. Once you put a tenant in there, you can go to a bank, and usually most banks will lend you 75% of the market value of the property, uh, which is different from what you paid and what you spent on it. And that's the key. You want to keep your total expenses between acquisition and renovation below 85%. I mean, in some markets, you can do it for less than 80%. In some markets, you may go up to 90%, but obviously you want to be below the market value. That way, when you refinance it, you know you're recouping some of the initial investment, and you have less money you have on the table, more a bigger multiplier it is, because you'll make the same money over 10 years, but your goal is to minimize what you leave on the table after you refinance. Okay. So next slide, you mentioned, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. Business structure.
Business structure. So I'll zip through this quickly. This may not be as critical at this moment, but the way I have it structured is I have a holding company which owns these property LLCs at the bottom. Each property LLC has anywhere from 10, 15, 20 properties inside it, right? So multiple property LLCs, and they are all owned by a holding company instead of me owning them. And then I have a separate management company and a separate financing company. The holding company is Seven Peaks, financing company is Cubera, management company is Golden Gate Management, and then I have these other companies, right? The idea is that your taxes become simpler, because if you hold the property, definitely if you plan on doing this at a larger scale, don't do them in your name. First few, it's okay. If you want to do that, it's easier to get loans if they're in your name. So if you want to do a few in your name before you transition them to LLCs, do that. But your taxes become simpler if you have them in LLCs and have a holding company instead of every one of these properties showing in your tax returns, right? And having a management company, the benefit is that my tenants don't know the actual ownership of the properties. They only see Golden Gate Management. They don't see RT Realty, Hilton, Truman, any other company names. They don't see my name. None of my tenants know my name. None of my tenants know the actual ownership. They only see the management company, and only the management company interacts with all the tenants. They are the ones who collect the rents. They are the ones. And then another thing is, I don't have to maintain so many bank accounts and so many QuickBooks for every property. Everything happens within the books of the management company. At the end of the year, we just split all the transactions between the LLCs when we file the taxes. So one bank accounts, one checkbook, one everything, you know, that makes it a lot easier banking wise. Administration wise also it's easier. And asset protection too. Tomorrow if you get sued, you know, basically even if they sue the management company, there's of course you want to have a good umbrella protection liability insurance, right? But from there they approach one of the LLCs, you can still limit the damage to that LLC only. But once they come to the LLC, then they have to go up the chain to the holding company. My holding company is in Wyoming. My property LLC is in Maryland, right? So now if there's a slip and fall case and the guy wants to sue me, he'll have to go to court in Maryland, then he'll have to go to court in Wyoming. He'll have to hire a Wyoming lawyer, attorney. To, so you just throw all these obstructions in place, and it's kind of harder for them to see. And also another thing that I do is that the financing company, even though initially when I acquire the properties, I acquire them for cash. So let's say I'm buying a $200,000 property, right? I'm paying cash for it. But on paper, the way I do it is Cubera Capital Partners actually lends the money to my property LLC to buy that property. And in fact, I actually record a deed of trust with the title company. So if you look at public records, you will see that there is a loan on every one of these properties, even though the loan is from one of my entities, right? The reason to do that is there are other reasons with more complicated tax reasons, but asset protection wise too. If somebody chooses to sue you, the first thing any attorney is going to look is, let's see how much money this guy has. They look at any of these properties, they'll say, okay, the property is worth 200. This guy has $190,000 in loan on this property. You know, this guy is not doesn't have much equity. There's no point wasting time going after this guy. So that's how it looks. So on paper, in county records, in public records, you show that everything is leveraged to the hilt. So what I do is I do that initially. When I go to the bank to refinance, the banks will refinance. They will pay off Cubera Capital Partners. So as far as the bank is concerned, Cubera is just another lender. I'm refinancing. So they'll pay off Cubera, and the bank's lien will be on the house after that. So that's how I do it. So it's good to have a structure like this, but obviously this comes down the line, once you have something established. No. I know I took a lot more time than I thought. So let me actually pause here. This was the last slide anyway. So let's go to questions. I see there are a ton of questions here.
యా గోపి గారు అసలు చెప్తుంటే ఇట్స్ వండర్ఫుల్ అండి, టన్స్ ఆఫ్ ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్, అండ్ వి స్టిల్ ఫీల్ దట్ వీ నీడ్ టు లెర్న్ ఎ లాట్ ఫ్రమ్ యూ, రైట్? బట్ విత్ దట్ సెడ్, ఐ విల్ స్టార్ట్ ఫ్రమ్ వన్ ఆఫ్ ది క్వశ్చన్ అండి. మీరు ఇంతాక స్లైడ్ లో చెప్పినట్టు సోర్సింగ్, అసలు మీరు చెప్పినట్టు వేరియస్ సోర్సింగ్స్ చెప్పారు. హౌ డు వి నో దట్ టు హూమ్ వి నీడ్ టు అప్రోచ్? ఇప్పుడు కోర్టులో something what we call it as off the market, right? ఆఫ్ ద మార్కెట్ ప్రైస్ వేరు ఉంటుందని చెప్పారు, మీరు షార్ట్ సేల్ ఉంటుందని చెప్పారు. ఇలాగ తెలిసినప్పుడు ఎవరిని అప్రోచ్ అవ్వాలి? అసలు సోర్సింగ్ ఎలా చేసుకోవాలి మనం?
ఇప్పుడు there's a different path for every one of them. Short sales are usually listed. Short sales are actually మీరు MLS లో రెగ్యులర్ లిస్టింగ్స్ లో చూసారంటే they will say that it's a short sale. Okay, so short sale is listed, REOs are listed. These two things are listed. The description actually says it's a short sale. Short sale takes anywhere from 3 to 6 months. Okay, so that's why agents make it clear on the MLS that, okay, this is a short sale, it's going to take time. Foreclosure auctions అనేది మీ లోకల్ కోర్ట్ హౌస్ వెబ్సైట్ ఉంటుంది, లేకపోతే లోకల్ న్యూస్ పబ్లికేషన్స్ అవి ఉంటాయి. And a lot of these things will also show up on Zillow too, because Zillow also gathers all this information. The only thing is you have to figure out మీ local court schedule చూసి ఏ రోజున auction అవుతుంది, and you have to do your research up front. Okay, because when you go there, they may be auctioning 20 houses on that day, right? And they do 20 houses in 1 hour, and you get 5 minutes on each house. And if you bid on the house and if you win, they expect you to put like $20,000 right there. So you have to show up with cashier's checks for $20,000. So me research anta munde chesukovali meer. So and majority of the foreclosures, you don't get to see the houses. I mean, I haven't seen many of the houses I bought, but obviously you get to that comfort level over time. You don't get there on day one. నేను ఫస్ట్ కాండో కొన్నప్పుడు దాన్ని 2 రోజులు ఇన్స్పెక్షన్ చేయించాను దాన్ని. Okay, but now I've bought properties where I haven't seen the property at all. It happens very often. And actually, if I even otherwise, my contractor goes and sees, and he does a WhatsApp call from the house. He shows me the property on WhatsApp, and I buy it. But foreclosures, you don't get to see the properties, so you have to be prepared for that. So probably that comes with some experience and sophistication. So you probably want to start with something where you can see the properties. And wholesalers అనేది, there are actually groups of people who call themselves wholesalers, who are very, very local. They are hyper local to your location, so you'll have to find wholesalers out there. Mm. You'll find them on real estate forums and this, that, and the other. You talk to them and tell them, hey, I want to buy houses. They'll start sending you the houses that they have. Probate also usually estate sales and మీకు MLS మీద కనిపిస్తాయి. But you can take it one step further. Once you have the volume, you can approach probate attorneys and tell them, hey, if you have a probate situation, I can buy this house very, very quickly off of your hands. See, probate attorney, he's not being paid by commission. His job is to, somebody died, the house has to be disposed of. He gets paid for doing the work. That's it. He doesn't care whether the house sells for 300,000 or 200,000. Of course, he has to be ethical about that, but he wants a quick sale. So when you go cash, because you're going cash, they are very interested and they are willing to cut a deal. Like I did 3 probates in the last 1 year. All 3 worked out really well. One was listed for 370. I got it for 330, immediate close. Another one, I got it for 180 and I fixed it for 50,000 or 60,000. It was in bad shape. So all in, I was at 240. Once I was done, when I went to refinance, it appraised at 350, right? So probate deals actually work out really well. But to answer your question, Andy, probably you will see all of this as you keep doing it, and a lot of these will also vary based on locations, right? So you will have to learn as you go, but there are some things that apply nationwide. We can talk about it more. I can put together more information if people are interested on how to do some of these things.
Perfect, Andy. I think
Gopi, sorry for interrupting you.
Sure.
I want a little more here, Gopi, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So the information is the key, right? Just like a Gopi said. So the foreclosures it's 99% it's mandatory. They have to advertise in the local newspaper. Like suppose if you see in the Washington metro area, all the foreclosures 100% they have to advertise in the Washington Post. There is one specific day for that one. So in your area, whatever is the official newspaper, if you keep looking at it, you will see this foreclosure information. That's the one of the best source. And second source is like if you say alexcooper.com, it's a nationwide agents for the foreclosure. If you go to their website, so they're going to see what property they list everything, address, the condition, sometimes the photos, and sometimes what is the base price and everything they listed there. So those are the 2 better sources you may want to look at it.
Definitely, very good point. And in fact, there is always some fake publication in every county. ఇప్పుడు మా కౌంటీలో ఇప్పుడు వర్జీనియా పైలట్ అని ఒకటి ఉంది వర్జీనియాలో. That is a nonsense publication, doesn't have anything useful, but they basically publish foreclosures. It's almost like మన గ్రీన్ కార్డ్ కి మనం యాడ్స్ వేస్తాం చూడండి, ఏదో నామకే వస్తే వేస్తాం అది యాడ్. We don't want any responses. Similarly, there's always a publication that's every locality has a publication like that. If you get hold of that, you will see everything in there. And Alex Cooper is a good source as well.
Alex Cooper. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So thank you, Andy. One another thing is, obviously we can see that you have a good crew, and identifying the right crew is far more important, chala important for our success, right?
Sure.
So మీరు మీ కాంట్రాక్టర్స్ ని ఎలా ఐడెంటిఫై చేశారు, and how did you start engaging them? Identifying the right contractors and getting a house fixed is much more important, and it brings a lot more value, right?
Sure.
సో ఎలా దొరికారు మీకు కాంట్రాక్టర్? How did you
I mean, I got lucky, and I mean, this guy is he did my basement long time ago, and then I just approached him because I was buying condos. I was acting like any other homeowner, right? Condo కొన్నాం ఫస్ట్ కాండో, వాడికే డగ్లస్కి ఫోన్ చేశా, డగ్లస్ వచ్చేస్తామంటే చేస్తా అన్నాడు. Then we started doing more. Then I asked him, will you do more with me? And I got lucky, he's a good guy. And on top of it, I helped him get his green card too. So he's forever indebted to me. So I helped him in that process. So I got lucky in that sense. So what I would say is there is no easy way. See, the contractors are the most difficult. It's not very easily quantifiable, you know, but we are all smart people. We'll see through it. There is no easy metrics you can look at and say this guy is good, this guy is bad. You'll just have to go through the process. But once you find a good guy, keep him busy, regardless of whether you have work or not.
Gotcha. సో బేసికలీ మీరు రెఫరెన్సెస్ ద్వారా కాకుండా ఇట్స్ త్రూ ఏ నోన్ ద్వారా వెళ్ళారు ఇది వన్ టైం.
Yeah, one that and you can start with references also, but more importantly, look at some of the things you have to look at with a contractor is he should not be too sophisticated. If he's too sophisticated, tomorrow he'll want to go and do it, right? It all depends on where your business is. Like మీరు నెలకి 50 ఇళ్ళు చేద్దాం అనుకున్నారు అనుకోండి, you want a really sophisticated contractor, not somebody. ఇప్పుడు మా వాడు ఉన్నాడు అనుకోండి, వాడికి పర్మిట్స్ అలాంటివన్నీ నేను హెల్ప్ చేయాలి వాడు కొంచెం, బికాజ్ ఈజ్ నాట్ దట్ సొఫిస్టికేటెడ్, రైట్? ఇంజనీరింగ్ సైడ్ అది నేను హెల్ప్ చేస్తాను. బట్ if you are doing a much bigger volume, you want more of a class A contractor. They will cost you a lot more. They may cost you 50% more, but that'll be a lot less work. It all depends on the మీరు just carpet paint kitchen అన్నారు అనుకోండి, any contractor can do. But we do more stuff. We actually do foundations. I buy houses with sunken foundations and all that. ఒక ఇల్లు కొన్నాం కాలేజ్ పార్క్ లో, ఇక్కడే యూనివర్సిటీ ఆఫ్ మేరిలాండ్ పక్కనే, గేట్ అవతలే. The owner sold the house for 100,000 below market value because the house sunk 6 inches or 8 inches on one side. The foundation went down and the house was starting to crack. So they sold it for 100. They panicked and sold it. It took us $10,000 to fix it. Put metal jacks under the foundation and raise it, just like కార్ని లేపినట్టే ఇల్లుని కూడా లేపచ్చు. Okay, so we just got the permits, raised the whole house by 8 inches. Again, it's worth 100,000 more. So you will find deals like this. You'll just have to have the contractor కావాలి. మీరు ఇంకా ఎక్కువ రీహాబ్ చేస్తానంటే ఒక ఆర్కిటెక్ట్ ఇంజనీర్ కూడా కావాలి మీకు, right? But it's there is no magic potion for that. You'll have to figure that out as you go, with the contractor.
Gotcha. సో వెన్ కమ్స్ టు ద సోర్సింగ్ అండి, ఇప్పుడు మీరు ఒక హౌస్ చూడంగానే లిస్టింగ్ ఏజెంట్కి డైరెక్ట్గా కాల్ చేసి మీరు మాట్లాడతాను అంటున్నారు. సో assume that I myself, I am very much new to the real estate. I do not know anything details about it, right? So I go through Zillow, Redfin, ilaga వీటన్ని వెబ్సైట్స్ వెళ్ళి చూస్తాం మనము. How do we approach a right real estate person or agent who can actually work with us, help us, and look at our idea? ఎలా ఐడెంటిఫై చేస్తాం?
Definitely look for agents who are investor friendly. I mean, the simple question to ask the agent is, how many investors do you work with? Okay. There are some agents who specialize mostly working with investors. And you can ask them that question. Some agents are more, working with homeowners, right? Majority of them are working with homeowners. How many investors do you work with? What are your sources of deals? I mean, the agent source, like some of these agents who work with investors, they are tied to banks, meaning when a bank has foreclosed properties or REOs, they actually list them with these agents. So they understand investment better. They like I just get texts from my agents who know me. Basically, they just send me the address, this much, the bank wants this much, and probably it'll take 50 to $80,000 to fix it. Are you interested? Just one text. I say, yes, I'm interested. They start writing the offer, right? But basically ask them if they are if they work with investors, and you will see as you work with them, వీటన్నిటికీ, there is the answer is almost the same. And the thing is, you'll have to experience it to know who is good and who is not. Some guys will say they work with investors, they may not be very helpful. Like the people that I నాకు ఫస్ట్ వన్ ఆఫ్ ద ఫస్ట్ 3 deals లో 150 పోయిందన్న కదా, అందులో ఫస్ట్ డీల్ సెకండ్ డీల్లో 90 పోయిందండి. ఆ 90 పోయింది ఎందువల్ల? బికాస్ ఆఫ్ ద ఏజెంట్. Because at that time he told me he's an investor friendly agent, he works with a lot of investors. వాడి మాట నమ్మి కొన్నాను నేను. Okay, but that was a very good lesson to learn in the very beginning, because now I don't go by what the agent says. The agent is going to tell you what you want to hear, because he makes his money when he sells the house. Doesn't matter whether he sells it for too much or too little. He wants to sell the house. He wants to palm the house off to you, right? So now I do my own numbers. I do everything. I look at what they tell me as a guide, but I don't entirely rely on them. So yes, you could also run into bad agents also, where you lose money, right? But definitely ask them what are their sources of deals, and whether they work with investors. How can they help you as an investor? One of the most important things I'll tell you, more than any of this, the agent has to believe you that you're serious. Think about this, right? The agent only makes money when you actually buy or sell a house. Until then, you are only wasting his time. So the agent has to believe that this guy is serious and he's going to buy houses from me, right? So initially, you may see a little bit of pushback from the agents. They may not be as helpful. So if you can show off in other ways, if you want to tell them that I own an IT business and I have 150 employees, 300 employees, tell him that. That's important for him to know that you are well funded, so you are serious. And you can tell him I'm looking for an agent who I can work with on an ongoing basis. So you have to get the agent on your side as well. Now agents work with me. Initially, I got the same pushback, right? 5 6 years ago. Now they work with me because I bought and I performed many times. If I say I'll buy this house in 2 weeks, I will buy it in 2 weeks, and I'll show up with cash and I'll buy it in 2 weeks. And once they get that trust level, you will see that you will start getting a lot of deals from them.
Gotcha. That's a very good thing. And మీరు ఎర్లియర్ క్వశ్చన్కి కాన్వర్జేషన్లో వీఆర్ టాకింగ్ అబౌట్ ద బ్యాంకర్స్, రైట్? సో హౌ డు వీ నో దట్ వాట్ కైండ్ ఆఫ్ బ్యాంకర్స్ డు వీ నీడ్ టు అప్రోచ్? హౌ డు వీ గెట్ ద బెస్ట్ ఏపీఆర్ అవుట్ ఆఫ్ ఇట్? ఇప్పుడు మనకి ఒక ఇంత ఏపీఆర్ కావాలి, ఇంత ఎస్టిమేషన్ కావాలి, ఎలా? హౌ డు వీ నెగోషియేట్ విత్ దమ్?
Banks, and see, primarily you want to, big banks won't work with you. In fact, even if they work with you, they're not very easy to work with. Let me make a distinction here, one clear distinction. If the house is in your name, if the investment property is in your name, you can go to any bank. You can go to Wells Fargo, Bank of America. You can still do those. They can still do those loans, because as long as the house is in your name, it'll be a loan that can be backed by Fannie and Freddie, right? So because of that, you will get a lot of different options for loans. The moment you put the house in an LLC, your options will dwindle, because at that point it becomes commercial, right? But that's where you go to local banks. Primarily try your local banks, me credit unions gani, chinna banks. In fact, my biggest lender is a local bank which only has a grand total of 6 branches. ఇక్కడ చిన్న ఊర్లో ఫ్రెడరిక్ అనే ఊర్లో వాళ్ళకి 6 branches ఉన్నాయి. That's the entire bank. That's where I get a lot of my loans from. My best APR. Basically you have to, initially I would say for the first couple of deals, don't worry about the APR as much, because in the grand scheme of things, it may not make as much of a difference for you. Okay, 0.25% may not make a huge difference. Try to go through the motions of learning this whole thing, refinancing, buying, refinancing, and everything. But the best way to get the best APR is just going and getting a letter of intent from each of those banks. So last time I did the refinance, I went to 2 banks. Ikkada Fulton Bank and O Bank. That's a reasonably decent local bank. They have they're in a few different states, versus hyper local bank kelena. Okada 4.2 ichchadu, inkoda 3.75 ichchadu. So I went with the local bank. So you'll have to basically get quotes from them.
Got you. Thank you. So now ఒక్కసారి gears, let's switch the gears towards house maintenance, right? మనం ఒకసారి హౌస్ కొన్న తర్వాత there are like two aspects. One, repairs. The second is we rent it out and the maintenance comes into picture, right?
Sure.
So maintenance కి వచ్చేసరికి how do you have the maintenance team involved? Again, is it your contractors who does that? What kind of maintenance general goes into that? Into
Okay.
your house maintenance?
For
Yeah.
me, I use, because it's the same contractor. I have a contractor who is constantly renovating houses that I buy. So at any given time, I have at least 2 or 3 projects going on, right? So his crew is working on those houses. Anytime there's a maintenance issue, he just goes to the tenant, rented property, fixes, and comes back. So for me, I have the luxury of having a crew that's working for me full time, and they just go and fix things as needed, right? But other option could be, let's say you use a management company. If you use a management company, then they will have the contacts. They will have different trades people for each trade. మీకు HVAC కానీ plumbing కానీ ఏదైతే అది వాళ్ళ దగ్గర ఉంటారు. So that's one option. But obviously that's a little more expensive. For me, it's a little cheaper because the guy is working on my projects and he's just running out and doing the. So that's one aspect of it. That's the repair aspect. And the maintenance, how do we maintain the whole thing? Everything is online based. We have educated, as soon as we get a new tenant, we onboard them. I have an employee who is a property manager, whose title is property manager. He actually shows them how to use the online portal to put new tickets, how to pay rent, this, that, and the other. So they put the tickets in. Everything comes to me, my property manager, and also my contractor. My contractor also, I train him on how to use the app to look at any tickets coming in. He goes, does the repairs, takes pictures. So we made it very streamlined, so you can get to that. There are good tools available out there. Without spending a whole lot, you can actually implement a lot of this to make the maintenance smooth. One thing I'll tell you is, tenants get upset very quickly, if you don't attend to what they're asking for. And you want happy tenants. You don't want tenants leaving because you're not maintaining. Because anytime they leave, you'll easily spend $1,000 to $2,000 on fixing up things, and you may have some vacancy in between. So you want to avoid that.
Got you. Thank you. So now coming back to this renters, right? How do we identify the right person who can rent it out? Do you follow any background checks? How do you do it? Yeah.
So the software that I use, it's called Buildium, buildium.com, Buildium, buildium.com. That's the property management software that I use. So that software has everything. So when I actually have a property that's ready to be rented, we publish it in that. It's basically an online service. We publish there. That pushes the listing to 70 different sites, including Zillow, Hotpads, this and every Trulia, Zillow, any site that you can think of. It automatically syndicates your listing to all those. And then when the tenants, actually anybody who is interested, they can book a viewing from there. And then they can, once they actually want to move forward, they apply from there. So we charge an application fee. And then the system itself does their background checks, credit background, criminal reports, all of these things. And it gives you all the information, and then I decide based on that. So as far as what criteria I use, I am not usually, using a credit score of 600 plus is a good practice. 600 or 660 even, depending on where you are. My portfolio is in a county which is not, where people don't have. Let's say it's not the well-off county, in my DC metro area. So typically the credit scores are lower. And one of the other things that I also noticed is, personally, I feel like credit score is overrated. We all know as immigrants, వచ్చినప్పుడు మనకి ఏం తెలుసు, తీసుకున్నాం క్రెడిట్ కార్డులు, తీసుకున్నాం క్లబ్కి వెళ్ళాం, స్పెండ్ చేసాం, చూస్తే మన క్రెడిట్ స్కోర్ 500 ఉంది, when we are students, right? So we've been through that. We understand how people can make mistakes. We are not trained to manage our credit score since we were kids, right? So I don't put as I put more emphasis on, for me, it's important that they have a good income. I make sure that their income is at least 3 times the rent. That's important for me. Second, I look for families. I prefer families with kids, because families with kids, for them being in that house is important for them, because if there is a single guy or just a couple, it's easy for them to move. Something happens, they can go sleep on somebody's sofa, right? But once you have kids, it's important for you to keep the roof on your kid's shoulder. So they are more serious about their housing. And also, because the kids make friends in the neighborhood, go to the neighborhood schools and all that, they don't move that often. So I look for families with kids. I depend a lot on my gut feel. But now I don't do, and I don't talk to them as much as my property manager, but I trained him on the same thing too. What's your gut feel? Do you feel good about these people? Do you feel like these people? So income, I do look at credit score. I give them a chance to explain if there is something bad on their credit. Criminal, not as much, right? ఇప్పుడు కొందరు ఉన్నారు, the guy, when he was a teenager, he had some, a bag of marijuana in his car. This it's been 15 years. Now he works for the federal government and all that, and it doesn't bother me as much. I'm not worried about those kind of records. But anything that's criminal violence, those kind of things, I stay away from it. Any fraud, I stay. If they have any fraud, I stay away from it. You know, one of the advantages I have is being in the DC Metro. Majority of my tenants work for Uncle Sam, which means a lot of them have been background checked already, and they are actually, a lot of them have security clearances and all that. So I don't worry too much. If the guy says I work for Department of Defense, I'm like, okay, come in. I don't have to do any background checks, because they're doing all kinds of background checks already, right? So you more than credit score, I say look at income and look at the type of job too. I also, if they are doing a job which is not, if their skill, I ask for their jobs and titles and all that, right? If the guy is working for Amazon as a product manager, I know the guy, even if he loses his job, he's going to get another job, right? Whereas if he's the kind of skill, okay, I'm, you know, uh, wiping tables at a restaurant, that's a job that it's easy to lose, and it's not a specialized skill. So I would be more concerned about people that don't have specialized skills. So I do look at all of those things, though a lot of these things you can't say that that's your criteria, equal housing laws and all that. you know that's between you and your property manager, but these are some of the things you want to evaluate.
Gotcha, Andy, gotcha. So one another interesting question is about taxation, Andy.
Mhm.
How do you handle these taxes? I know you have multiple properties. When it comes to the end of the year, there are a personal tax that comes into picture. At the same time, your LLC taxes comes into picture. How do you handle these taxes?
So what I see in a simpler terms, basically you pay taxes on your income, right? So మీకు $100 రెంట్ వచ్చింది అనుకోండి ఆ ఇయర్లో, ఓకే, అందులో మీరు you spent $20 on repairs, and you spent another $20 on or another $40 on interest payments. Principal payments, obviously that's not an expense, but interest payment is expense. So మీరు మొత్తం $60 spend చేశారు అనుకోండి, the remaining 40, if you own a property in your name, it directly shows up in your tax returns. Okay, so you'll pay rent, you'll pay taxes on the profit that you made after all your expenses. Also, don't forget there is also depreciation, right? um, Without going into too much detail, basically residential properties depreciate over 27 and a half years, which means if you have $2.75 million worth of residential property, you can depreciate 100,000 a year, meaning you can reduce your taxable income by 100,000 a year.
Wow.
That in itself is a huge benefit, right? But I mean, depreciation is not all that it is cracked up to be, because when you depreciate, your basis gets lower. At the end, when you sell it, your buy price will be reduced by the depreciated amount. So it's the same thing, but you have to depreciate anyway. So there is a depreciation, and your expenses and interest expenses, maintenance, repairs, all of those, you deduct all that. The difference shows up directly on your tax return if you own it in your name. Even if you own it in an LLC, it'll still, if you are the only member, then it's a disregarded entity. Even then, everything will show up directly on your tax returns. No difference as far as taxes goes, whether you hold it individually or in an LLC where you are the only member, right? Whereas if it's an LLC where there are two members, then what happens is the LLC does the taxes and creates a K1 and gives it to both of you. You just put the K1. So even if the LLC has 50 properties, all 50 properties will go into one K1, a single K1, one piece of paper that you will insert in your taxes. So it's not a bad idea for you to, even if you are the majority owner, మీ తమ్ముడికో ఎవరికో ఒక 1% LLC ownership ఇచ్చారనుకోండి ఫ్రెండ్కో, then basically you have that K1 situation where you get the K1. Now, taking this one step further, you know, taxation కి ఒకసారి మన బిజినెస్ స్ట్రక్చర్ స్లైడ్ చూపిస్తారండి.
Yeah. Yeah, ఇదిగోండి.
Okay. So if you look at the business structure, so the way I'm doing it right now is the holding company is a C corp, right? So all the profits will go there and stay there. But C corp has double taxation. That's understood. But the idea is that that's where I'll accumulate the money, but I don't have to let the money accumulate there. The management company is a S corp, and the LLCs are all LLCs, right? So I have a C, I have a S, I have LLCs. Depending on how the tax law changes, I can move the money accordingly. I mean, nothing is stopping. Let's say S corp is more advantageous this year because of some new tax law. Then I'll make my LLCs pay more management fee to my management company, right? So the management company has a higher income. If LLC is more advantageous, I'll leave more money down below, or I will let more profit show all the way to the holding company. So once you get, that's another benefit of a structure like this is, depending on what the current tax situation is, you can adjust your flow of money to optimize your taxes.
వండర్ఫుల్ అండి, వండర్ఫుల్. అసలు ఇంతవరకు ఈ ఐడియా కూడా రాలేదు మాకు. ఒక ఎస్ కార్పు, ఒక సి కార్పు, ఒక ఎల్ఎల్సి, 3 కాంబినేషన్స్ లో మాక్సిమైజింగ్ ద ప్రాఫిట్స్ అనేది ఇట్స్ వండర్ఫుల్ థింగ్. సో వీ హ్యావ్ ఫ్యూ మోర్ క్వశ్చన్స్ అండి. ఐ నో వీ ఆల్రెడీ క్రాస్ ద టైమ్ లైన్, బట్ ఐల్ టేక్ ఫ్యూ మోర్ క్వశ్చన్స్ అండ్ దెన్ వీ షల్ టేక్ ఏ బ్రేక్ అండి. ఓకేనా? One of the question is especially related to the tenants, right? So we know that how you have come to a conclusion how to identify the tenant, but there are like hard scenarios where a tenant is not clean enough to keep the property clean, or he is not up to a scale where he's not able to pay the rent on time, or skipping the rents, right? How do you manage those tough situations, or how do you manage a tough tenant who is not willing to work with us or not cooperate to us?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of doing business అండి. మీరు అందరూ ఐటీలో ఉన్నారు, ప్రాజెక్ట్ కానీ వెళ్ళమంటే ఆడు వెళ్తాడు ఒకడు, ఏం చేస్తారు? You'll deal with it, right? Same thing. The only problem is tenants have too many protections here. To evict a tenant right now because of COVID, it's taking 9 months. Okay, so 6 to 9 months to first time eviction moratorium out on there. So you can't evict him for not paying rent. But if there's a breach of lease, then you can evict him. So if the lease says that you have to keep the premises clean, and మీరు వెళ్ళినప్పుడు clean గా లేకపోయినా, వాడు water bill కట్టకపోయినా, you can say, okay, this is a breach of lease, so I'm going to evict you. But eviction is a long process. The best bet is to work with your tenant as much as you can. Sometimes you just have to write your losses off. I mean, luckily for me, for the most part, I had good tenants. I have one problem tenant right now. So what I did with him is that what $4,000 water bill ippuda katledu. But initially I figured they'll cut the water, then he'll pay it anyway. I have nothing to lose. But because of COVID, the county is not cutting water to tenants. So he's accumulating the bill and he's not paying it. Water bill actually goes with the property, it doesn't go with the tenant. So eventually when he vacates, I'll be stuck with a $4,000 bill. So what I did, I waited వాడికి September 30th కి వాడిది ఇదైపోతుంది, his lease ends. I didn't say anything. I just went to him. I have to give him a mandatory 60-day notice because of COVID. I just told him, okay, you're leaving at the end of September. I know the guy is not prepared to leave. Now he's coming to the negotiation table. He's like, how can you give us 2-month notice? I have a family, 4 kids. I'm like, okay, figure it out. The only way I'll extend you is if you pay all the past due bills. And after that, I'm going to do month to month. And if I don't see the rent on the 5th, I'll give you a notice to vacate on the 6th. That's the only way I can work with you. So you just have to work with them. But there are attorneys out there who specialize. One thing, Andy, don't show any mercy. First thing is that you should not have a personal relationship with your tenant. That's a problem. నేను ఫస్ట్ లో స్టార్ట్ చేసినప్పుడు ఐ డిడ్ ఆల్ ద వర్క్ మై సెల్ఫ్. సో మై ఫస్ట్ ఫ్యూ టెనెంట్స్ న్యూ మీ. వాడికి అద్దె కట్టకపోతే వాడు ఫోన్ చేసి, గోపి, మై మై సన్ ఇస్ దిస్, మై డాటర్ ఇస్ దిస్, నాకు ఉద్యోగం పోయింది, నాకు అది అయ్యింది, నేను అక్కడికి వెళ్ళాలి, కథలు చెప్తారు అందరు. సో that's why now, once I hired a property manager, he's the only point of contact. They don't even know my name. I don't sign the lease. I don't anything. So don't make it personal. If you want to make this a business, don't make it a personal relationship. Don't know your tenant personally. Because people act very differently when they are dealing with a professional versus when they are dealing with you, knowing that you are a real person who can make the final call. They will take advantage of it. And మనకు కూడా మనసు ఒప్పదు కదా, why get into it? So keep it professional, keep one layer, keep everything at arm's length. And ఎవరన్నా అద్దె కట్టకపోతే do not hesitate. Use an attorney to send the notice and actually file for eviction in the court, local court. That only takes $60, $70 కి ఫైల్ చేసేయచ్చు. మీరు కూడా ఆన్లైన్ చేయొచ్చు. The moment the guy gets a notice from the court, it's a whole different ball game. People turn around and pay. అప్పుడు దాకా కథలు చెప్తారు, or they will ignore you. They think that you won't do anything. But actually don't go through the eviction process, because that takes too long. Unless it works out in your situation specifically, it takes too long. But don't hesitate to push those people. మనం జాలి పడితే they will take advantage of it.
Got you. సో ఇవన్నీ ఈ మధ్య కాలంలో అబ్జర్వ్ చేస్తే ఇవన్నీ మన వాళ్ళు అంత వెయిటేజ్ తీసుకోలేక people are thinking for another route of Airbnb. What do you suggest of Airbnb model?
Airbnb లో నేను చూసానండి, the numbers, at least for me, they didn't look as good as everybody says. It's a concept. Airbnb చేశారంటే, if let's say you are in a good tourist location or a good location where you can always rent a room out and all that, you can definitely do that. But Airbnb కూడా మీరు స్కేల్లో చేయాలంటే, అగైన్ యూ హ్యావ్ టు యూజ్ Airbnb ప్రాపర్టీ మేనేజ్మెంట్ కంపెనీ. మీరు సొంతగా చేయలేరు కదా. ఎన్ని తాళాలు ఇస్తారో, ఎంతమందిని స్క్రీన్ చేస్తారు మీరు, రైట్? సో యూ విల్ హ్యావ్ టు, the expenses are pretty high. Actually, Airbnb కి వెళ్ళి, there are some sites out there where you can go and evaluate your property for Airbnb rental. మీకు ఎంత రెంట్ వస్తుంది, ఎంత ఖర్చు అవుతుంది అని అనాలిసిస్ చేసి, మీకు ఇన్కమ్ ఎంత ఉంటుందని మీ ప్రాపర్టీ అడ్రస్ని బట్టి చెప్పే సైట్లు ఉన్నాయి. Okay, I forgot the names, but there are plenty of sites there which will evaluate your property. I actually did that on some of my properties, and I realized that I will make a lot more money, just doing straight rentals than doing that. See, మీకు ప్రాబ్లమ్స్ అనేవి Airbnb లో కూడా ఉంటాయండి. ఇక్కడ you're dealing with people here, you're dealing with people there. At least ఇక్కడైతే you're dealing with the same tenant all the time, right? అక్కడ you're dealing with constant flow of people, so I personally am not too crazy about it, but there are people who are doing very well. But again, ఏ చేసినా సరే you have to do it at a scale. ఒకటి రెండు చేస్తే, ఒకటి రెండు చేయొద్దు అంటలేదు, టైం పాస్ ఒకటి రెండు చేద్దాం అంటే, it's a good slow income, slow growth, it'll be there. But if you are talking about a business, you have to be prepared to deal with all the headaches that come with a business. So whether it be Airbnb or this, it's the same level of headaches you will see.
Good అండి, గుడ్. ఇప్పుడు మీరు అబ్జర్వ్ చేసాం అనుకోండి, యూ హ్యావ్ డన్ మల్టిపుల్ డీల్స్ అండ్ యూ ఆర్ డూయింగ్ విత్ ఎ చైన్ ఆఫ్ ప్రాపర్టీస్, రైట్? ఈ చైన్ ఆఫ్ ప్రాపర్టీస్ అని ఎలా ఉంటుంది? ఒకే జాగ్రఫిక్ లొకేషన్ లో ఉంటాయా, లేకుంటే డూ ద స్పాట్స్ అరౌండ్ డిఫరెంట్ స్టేట్స్? హౌ డు యూ డూ దట్?
I personally do everything in one location within one county. You know, everything is in one county. In fact, all my properties are within like 15 miles of each other, and all of them are 15 miles from, you know, Washington DC, like the capital, right outside DC. Majority of them are right outside DC. It's a good market. I understand the market really well. There are plenty of people who do it across state lines and all that, you know, remotely. You know, I haven't done that because, you know, there's my county law. There are what I think 300,000 houses a day. ఎక్కడికో వెళ్ళటం ఎందుకు, ఎదురుకుండా 300. There's plenty of deals to be done in any one location. So personally, I will advocate for doing in areas that you know well. I know every street. When somebody brings a property to me, I look at the zip code. I already know what is there, whether it's good or bad. I don't have to research from the beginning. So I prefer doing it in one place. And I'm doing some majority of them right outside DC, and I'm also doing a lot in near Virginia Beach. అక్కడికి ఎందుకు వెళ్ళామంటే డీసీ దగ్గర, ఇక్కడ మా దగ్గర డీల్స్ కొంచెం కష్టం. There too much competition, too many investors and all that. So I'm also doing in Virginia Beach. There the properties are cheaper, not in actually at the beach, but in the Hampton Roads area. There are about 10 cities there, 250 square miles area lo. You can buy houses we are able to pick up houses for 40,000-50,000 and put like 30,000 into it. So 80,000, and we can rent the house for $1,000 a month. So we have started working on that. So I'm doing that also, but I would suggest stick to what you know initially, at least.
Got you, Andy. So one of the interesting question, Andy, especially with this COVID situation, okay? COVID situation prior, few properties కొన్నాము. But with the COVID, the properties prices has gone way up. Do you think that is it good time for us to sell these properties and be in the cash so that we get another opportunity to buy such kind of properties, or do we need to stick to them right now?
I mean, I'll give a general answer. The situation may be a little different in your specific location, but I don't think the property values are going down personally. నాకు కూడా అనిపించింది, should I sell some of them. I didn't sell them. నేనంటే కొన్ని ఫ్లిప్స్ చేశాను లాస్ట్ 1 year లో. ప్రైసెస్ బాగున్నాయి కదా అని. Flip is where I guess most of you understand. I buy a house, fix it up and sell it right away, right? Because the property prices are good. But I didn't sell any of my existing properties because I don't think property values are going down. You'll lose money in transaction costs. మీకు 6-8% అక్కడే వెళ్ళిపోతుంది కదా. మళ్ళీ ఒకసారి కొని అమ్మాలంటే మీరు 10% స్పెండ్ చేస్తారు. మీరు $1 million చేశారంటే 100,000 మీకు between selling and buying them again, you lose 100,000. So you lost 10% value right there in the transaction costs. And I don't think property values are going down. They may not go up like this, but they are not going down. The comps have been established. The COVID situation existed long enough that every neighborhood లో ఇప్పుడు ఈ కిటికీ పక్కిల్లు నా పక్కిల్లు 825 లిస్ట్ చేసి 966 అమ్మాడు. So $140,000 above list. So there are many houses that sold like that. The comps are there. Next year ఏమైనా సేల్కి వచ్చిందంటే ఏం చూస్తారు? They look at what are the previous sale prices in the last 12 months. All the sale prices in the last 12 months are elevated. So the new prices will also be the same. So comps have been established. You don't have to worry about things falling. It may plateau, it may grow very slowly beyond this, but no, it won't fall. So I would say stick to it. Not to mention, మీరు recent గా కొని ఉంటే మీకు capital gains taxes అవి కూడా you have taxation. There's no point in selling. You'll lose money in taxes, you'll lose money in transaction costs. Between all this, you'll lose a good 15% of your total money, which is not worth it. The houses will never fall 15% in value.
Got you, Andy. Got you. Thank you. And with that said, we have one last question, and it's an interesting question, but we would like to understand your business action, right? Sorry, Annie, I just muted them. So with your kind of current expertise,
Mhm.
Do you have any business model that is running where we can invest into your project? Do you have some kind of opportunities? అది ఇప్పుడు మీరు, you don't need to answer it right away if you don't have an answer, but what we are thinking is we have some kind of మాకు అర్థమయ్యే వరకు,
Mhm.
before we get into any of the one new project, before we understand the essence, is there an opportunity where we can invest into one of your ventures?
Sure. I mean, since it's that's something that I've been kicking around for a while. Whether I should bring capital from outside and do it at a much larger scale. Um, it's a The option is there. I mean, do I have something in place right now to do that? No, but is that something that can be explored? Definitely. If you look at, that's where, I'm looking at what much bigger players are doing, right? So initially I wanted to prove this model, right? When I first started, I want to prove this model that it works and all that. Before I take someone else's money to do this, I want to make sure it actually works, and I've established that it works. And I am happy enough doing ఏదో బఠానీలు తిన్నట్టు ఒక్కోటి ఒక్కోటి ఎలా కొనుక్కుంటూ వెళ్తే, it'll grow slowly. I mean, slow, it's not very slow. Last year నేను every month 1-2 properties కొన్నాను before COVID. Each month I buy at least 1 or 2 houses. But COVID వచ్చాక డిమాండ్ పెరిగి నాకు డీల్స్ దొరకట్లేదు. So I slowed down. Instead of buying rental properties, I bought and flipped the properties because prices బాగున్నాయి కదా. So I flipped them. So I don't, I mean, I can continue what I'm doing, but part of me, మనకి ఎప్పుడు కొంచెం, that itch is always there. You want to do something at a scale అనేది, that itch is always there. We are business people. At some point, everything gets boring. So whatever I'm doing is boring for me. But I will be stupid to stop doing that because it's easy money, right? But ఇది చెయ్యాలి అంటే we have to look at the models that hedge funds and all these guys are taking. They are doing at a very large scale. చేస్తే మనం ఎలా చేయాలంటే, we should target 500 or 1,000 houses, pick a metro area, attack the area, and it has to be done professionally, and it would be a large scale investment. Uh, చిన్న చిన్నగా చేసి, సింగిల్ ఫ్యామిలీలో చిన్న చిన్నగా చేసి, the problem is, మీరు 10 ఇల్లు చేశారనుకోండి, అందులో 1-2 ప్రాబ్లమ్స్ వచ్చినాయి అనుకోండి, that's 10-20% gone, right? The bigger the scale, you can streamline it more. ఎందుకంటే అడ్మినిస్ట్రేటివ్ కాస్ట్ కూడా ఎక్కువ ఉంటాయి ఇలా ఇన్వెస్టర్స్ అందరిని తీసుకొచ్చామంటే. So for that to make sense, yes, there is a possibility. It's something that I've been kicking around for a while. I haven't put anything together, but definitely something I've been thinking about.
Wonderful, Andy. Thank you.
Okay, I have nothing to do with this question, and I know I've been asking you for the same thing for so long.
కాదు, ఈయన విజయ్ గారు ఎప్పటి నుంచో అడుగుతూ అంటారు. నేనంటాను, సార్ ఇవన్నీ చిన్న చిన్న ప్రాజెక్టులు, ఇట్స్ నాట్ మీ టైప్ ప్రాజెక్టులు కాదు, పెద్దది వచ్చినప్పుడు వస్తాను మీ దగ్గరగా అంటాను. అంటే విజయ్ అంటారు, 50,000 అయినా సరే చెప్పండి అంటారు. So no, I'm still working very
Somebody read my
diligently for the
mind.
last 5 years to find a project big enough for Vijay. No.
Oh, come on, Gopi.
వండర్ఫుల్ అండి, వండర్ఫుల్ గోపి గారు.
Sure.
డెఫినెట్లీ మన ఫోరంలో చాలా మంది ఇంట్రెస్ట్ ఉన్నారు, అండ్ వీఆర్ స్టిల్ ట్రైంగ్ టు ఎక్స్ప్లోర్. ఇప్పుడు ఆస్టిన్ కానీ, డాలస్ కానీ, ఇలాగ వేరియస్ లొకేషన్స్ లో దే ఆర్ థింకింగ్ ఆఫ్ టు స్టార్ట్ ఇన్ టు దిస్ రియల్ ఎస్టేట్ వెంచరింగ్ అనమాట. One of the key areas is they are trying to figure it out whether they have to invest into land and buy some kind of acreage, or they have to do this kind of real estate, buying small houses and then maintain a portfolio. Ilanti decisions, they are still trying to figure it out. I know it's a bigger topic. We already crossed the timeline, so మేము కొన్ని questions అని gather చేసి we'll try to come to you, Andy. And sure, if anyone needs further help, we will try to reach out to you, Andy. Gopi garu.
Sure, definitely, Andy, definitely.
Okay.
And in fact, one more thing I want to throw quickly in there is, if you are doing real estate, I mean, any place is a good place, but the Sunbelt area is where the population migration is. Texas, Florida, some states like Texas and Florida and Washington State up north, they are seeing the highest influx of population. So those are some of the best areas. In fact, Dallas, Austin are really huge. And the majority of the hedge funds that I'm working with, all of them want houses in those areas. And I know many people who are buying land, our people who are buying land in, in Texas and other places. Keep in mind, you can put both of these things together. Build to rent is a big category now. Many companies are actually buying land and building houses purely to rent. They are building a community of 700 houses. They are all rentals, and they are also purpose built for renting. ఎలా ఉంటుందంటే మీ హెచ్విఏసి బాయిలర్ గీలర్ అన్ని ఇంట్లో సైడ్ కు రూమ్ లో ఉంటాయి విత్ డోర్ ఫ్రమ్ అవుట్ సైడ్, బికాస్ ద హోల్ గోల్ ఇస్ మెయింటెనెన్స్ కి ఈజీగా ఉంటుందని. So tomorrow, if the maintenance guy comes, he doesn't need you to let him into the house. He can go on. So they are actually building brand new houses for rentals. So that's, I know manoliki land annattu illu anavu, because that we grew up with buying land in India and all that. Land makes a lot of sense for it, but be cautious that land entitlements are very, very difficult in this country. Manla kaadu, manaki ల్యాండ్ ఉందంటే వాడికి మేస్త్రికి ఫోన్ చేసామంటే వాడు వస్తాడు, కట్టేస్తాడు వెంటనే. ఇక్కడ అలా కాదు. యుల్ స్పెండ్ 1, 2, 3 years in getting all the clearances and permits to build on land. But land is a good investment too if you buy raw land and work on it. Engineering is very expensive here. మీరు $1 million పెట్టి ల్యాండ్ కొన్నారంటే you'll spend $3-4 million to subdivide that and do all the engineering work. It's a lot more expensive than it is for us, undeveloped land ఇక్కడ. But that's an option too.
Perfect.
So how do you see the California as an investment and the pros and cons? Anything?
California is I used to live in California a long time ago, but I don't know much. But California is probably one of the hardest regulations and all that. And not to mention, California is too expensive అండి. ఇప్పుడు మా ఫ్రెండ్ వాళ్ళ అబ్బాయి కొత్తగా జాబ్ వచ్చింది, టౌన్ హౌస్ కొంటున్నాడు, కొంచెం అడ్వైజ్ అని ఫోన్ చేశాడు. చేస్తే ఎంత బాబు టౌన్ హౌస్ అంటే 3 bedroom టౌన్ హౌస్ 1.85 million అంట. Okay, so so I think it's too expensive for you. The returns don't make sense because of the price of the properties. మీరు లాంగ్ టర్మ్ అప్రిషియేషన్ కి కొనాలి అంటే కొనొచ్చు, but in the meantime your returns are so low that it's a lost opportunity. Now the opportunity cost is too high. You want to actually buy in places where your monthly rent is as close to 1% of the property value. మీరు 100,000 పెట్టి ఇల్లు కొన్నారంటే మీకు నెలకి $1,000 రెంట్ వచ్చిందంటే that's the ideal property, which you won't get in California or New York or Washington DC.
So what are the best places that you identified?
అంటే Midwest is always good అండి. ఇప్పుడు Texas is cheap, Florida is cheap, but even మీ ఏరియాలో కూడా look for something that is close enough for you where it's a little cheaper. I don't know if there is anything cheap. మీరు కాలిఫోర్నియాలో మీరు ఓక్లాండ్ వెళ్ళండి, బేకర్స్ఫీల్డ్ వెళ్ళండి, అక్కడ కూడా అంతే ఖరీదు ఉన్నాయి, రైట్? బట్ మేబీ యూ కెన్ లుక్ అట్ అవుట్ ఆఫ్ స్టేట్ ఇన్వెస్ట్మెంట్.
సార్ ఒక క్వశ్చన్ అండి. ఇది ఇప్పుడు మొన్న లాస్ట్ వీక్ మా ఫ్రెండ్ హెచ్ఓఏ మీటింగ్కి వెళ్ళాడు. దెర్ వాజ్ డిస్కషన్ ఇన్ ది హెచ్ఓఏ మీటింగ్ దట్ దే వాంట్ టు లిమిట్ ది నెంబర్ ఆఫ్ ఎల్ఎల్సి పర్చేజెస్ ఇన్ ద కమ్యూనిటీ. సో గోయింగ్ ఫార్వర్డ్.
రామ్ సమేత గారు డ్రాప్ ఆఫ్ అయిపోయారండి.
రామ్ గారు
హలో, వినిపిస్తున్నారండి?
చెప్పండి.
అదే ఇప్పుడు మా ఫ్రెండ్ యాక్చువల్గా లాస్ట్ వీక్ ఫ్లోరిడాలో ఉంటాడు. హీ వెంట్ టు ది హెచ్ఓఏ మీటింగ్ and there was a discussion in the HOA meeting that they want to limit the number of purchases for LLC in the community. So going forward elanti regulations emana vastayi antara?
It's very specific to the HOA and there is a reason why they are doing it. Miru if you know about FHA loans, mana Federal Housing Authority loans untai. In a given community, if more than I think 15% of the properties are owned by LLCs, then FHA loans are not possible in that community because FHA restricts loans only to communities where the number of investors is less than 15%. So some HOAs actively watch how many, endukante a lot of people who are lower income people, they get FHA loans. So all of a sudden one funding source for buying properties in that community gets restricted. So some HOAs, but that's very rare and it's like it's not very common.
ఇంకో క్వశ్చన్ అండి, యాక్చువల్గా ఇప్పుడు ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ఐ ఫైండ్ ఎ ప్రాపర్టీ, ద కండిషన్ ఇస్ వెరీ బ్యాడ్, ఐ వాంట్ టు పుట్ అన్ ఆఫర్ ఆన్ ఇట్. Obviously, the other party is looking for a cash offer, and I don't have that much cash to make a purchase. Is it easy to find a hard cash lender ande ikkada?
Hard money lenders untarandi, hard money lenders are all over the place. You can get it. You'll pay pretty decent fee, like probably 3% fee untade initially, and plus probably 10-12% interest untade. For మీరు ప్రాక్టీస్ కోసం చేస్తుంటే చేయొచ్చు. It's okay. You'll lose some money in that process, but overall you'll still make money. It's a good experience, but eventually it's better to borrow money from friends and family if you can, or if your existing house has some equity, take money out of that. Hard money eats into your money very, very quickly, and something goes wrong, they will repossess the property, right? So once they may repo the property. If it's your first one, Miku, if the path is clear to you, there's nothing wrong in doing it. It's a practice, because you're not going to put your kids through college buying one house. If you're doing it, your goal is going to be to do 10, 20, 30, 50. And on the first one, again, like I said, think of the extra money that you pay the hard money lender as a tuition fee that you paid for learning.
ఈ క్వశ్చన్ అడిగింది ఎవరండి?
రామ్ సమేత అండి.
హలో రామ్ గారు, నా పేరు విజయ్ కూర్చోండి. మీరు యూ కెన్ కాల్ మీ అండి, ఐ కెన్ హెల్ప్ యూ ఆన్ దిస్ వన్.
నేను యాక్చువల్లీ కపుల్ ఆఫ్ ఫ్లిప్స్ చేశాను, అంటే వర్కౌట్ అయింది. బట్ ఇఫ్ ఐ వాంట్ టు గో లిటిల్ బిగ్గర్, ఐ డోంట్ హావ్ దట్ మచ్ క్యాష్ అన్నమాట.
ఆఫ్లైన్ మాట్లాడదాం రామ్ గారు, యూ కెన్ కాల్ మీ అండి.
ఓకే థాంక్స్ అండి.
All right, Andy. I know we already crossed the timeline, and we can further have a conversation on this one, Andy. If needed, we can have one more session. Thanks a lot, Gopi garu.
No problem.
మీరు ఎంజాయ్ ఈవెంట్కి వస్తున్నారు కదండి గోపి గారు?
Jay bro, Gopi not completely aware of this Sanjay event. I just categorically told him that we are going there. My goal is to
accountability hold చేస్తున్నామండి విజయ్ గారు.
Yeah, sure. But with all being said, I just want to say, thank you, Gopi.
Sure.
Whether I don't know whether you realize or not, there are 270 people joined here.
Okay.
This is a great session. I know a lot of people are appreciative, sending messages to Jay and all, but I also, so many people already sending a message to me, thanks for bringing you to the session, and they, gained a lot of knowledge. But I want to put you on the spot. I've been asking you to take a membership in APTA for so long.
Okay.
So I want you to commit in front of all these people that you're going to take the membership.
Sorry, I didn't know there was something specifically called a membership.
Yeah, there is a membership.
Expensive.
You can't afford it. It's $100.
That's right.
Oh, okay.
Jay garu, I thought he's coming for New Jersey event, sir.
Yeah. సో మనకి న్యూ జెర్సీ ఈవెంట్ లో దాదాపు 350 పీపుల్ వస్తున్నారండి మన కమ్యూనిటీ నుంచి.
Okay.
And lot of enthusiasts, they are trying to attend, learn much more about the stock market, investments, and other opportunities too.
Okay.
That would be a wonderful place, wonderful platform. In fact, we call it as a $1 billion platform, best for a $1 billion platform. We appreciate everyone come and join us and try to explore, leverage the opportunity, Andy.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. With that said, thanks a lot, Gopi garu. Thanks a lot for the.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Vijay.
One thing I want you to, Gopi, know, this fire team, the team who is, arranging, organizing all these things, they're helping a lot to the community, especially in the recent pre-IPOs. They brought so many pre-IPOs. They are like 100%, 200%, more than 200% return within the 3 to 6 months span of the time. They are working their best to empowering the community. We all owe him a lot. They're doing an extraordinary job, especially people bringing the people like you and to the community and all.
Thank you, Andy.
Definitely. Okay. Thanks a lot, everyone. It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks a lot,
Thanks,
Gopi.
Bye.
Thank you, Gopi garu.
All right. Thanks, Andy.